What is going on, guys? I am BlackOpsAmazing. Welcome back to another episode of the Zombies Questions. I believe today we are on episode 13 or 12, maybe even 11. I'm not too sure, but you know how this series works. You guys ask me questions in the comment section below. I take the best ones and try and answer them for you. As always, if you enjoy the video, a like rating anytime you feel like it would be very much appreciated. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest videos on the channel. If there's anything you want to know, make sure you leave your comments in the comment section below. And when you're ready, let's do this. So the first question of today comes from Clutch Plays, and he says, why was the jet gun in the transit area? I mean, in terms of storyline. So basically, what is the story of the jet gun? Who made it and why is it in transit? Well, as we can see, the jet gun, or otherwise known as the Thrusterdyne Aeronautics Model 23, is basically made up of scrap. It is a jet turbine, a spool of wire, a gauge, and a motorcycle handbrake. So it's just bits of scrap that you can find around transit. Since transit is basically an apocalyptic wasteland, after the 3 rockets hit this location from the moon, they destroyed this whole town, this whole area in transit, and as we can see, the floor is cracked open, lava is everywhere. We have a jet turbine, so we can guess that a plane crashed somewhere around here, and then the rest is made up of a gauge, a piece of wire, and a handbrake. So it's just pieces of random scrap and abandoned vehicles. These transit crew find these pieces, put them all together, and make this weapon. There's really no storyline behind it, nothing to do with Group 935. It's just a weapon made out of scrap that the transit crew make. The next question comes from Series Gaming 102, and he says, how did Takeo, Dempsey, Richthofen, and Nikolai find each other? Well, as we know, Takeo, Dempsey, and Nikolai were test subjects of Richthofen's. When Richthofen was working in Group 935 with the Germans, these characters were captured as test subjects. Nikolai was captured by the German forces during the Battle of Stalingrad on January the 16th of 1943. Takeo was taken prisoner by Group 935 and Division 9. As we know, during that time of 1943, Group 935 and Division 9 had joined forces. They were working together. And so the Emperor betrayed Takeo, and he was taken prisoner by these two groups and used as a test subject. The third and final test subject was Pablo Marinas, a Mexican spy that was captured by Group 935 at De Eisendrache. Once Richthofen had all 3 test subjects, he then transported them to Siberia, which, as we know, is Call of the Dead. Whilst in Siberia, Richthofen began experimenting on the 3 test subjects, but whilst doing so, he killed Pablo. Following a spleen removal, obviously it went wrong, and as we know, his spleen fell on the floor, Pablo wasn't moving anymore, and he had died. And so because of this, Richthofen now needed a new test subject. Luckily for him, at this same time, Tank Dempsey, who had been sent into the Verrückt Asylum to save Peter McCain, had been captured by Group 935. And Richthofen, needing a replacement, then transferred Dempsey over to Siberia. So now he had all 3 of his test subjects, Takeo, Nikolai, and Dempsey. Richthofen experimented on the 3 characters, causing them all to have memory loss and not knowing who they were anymore. And once he had finished experimenting and injecting the new serum into them, he then transferred them back to Derice. Then obviously, as we know, the zombie outbreak happened, Samantha became in control of the zombies, Richthofen woke the test subjects up, and that's how they all met. Because their memories had been wiped by Richthofen previously, they didn't know that he was evil, and so went along with what Richthofen said, and the characters began working together. And that is how they met. The next question from Aaron was here, says, did the 1.0 crew die, and if so, how? And this question was actually asked by a lot of people. What happened after the moon Easter egg to Takeo, Nikolai, and Dempsey? Well, the simple answer is we don't exactly know, but we can take a guess. Well, as we know, in Moon, Richthofen finally completed his ultimate goal to take control of the zombies. Using the Vril device he collected from Call of the Dead and the focusing stone he collected from Shangri-La, he fused both of these together, and in doing so, this allowed Richthofen to swap bodies with Samantha. As we know, Samantha was stuck inside of the MPD in Moon, and so combining both of these devices together, the MPD pyramid opened and Richthofen switched bodies with Samantha, meaning Richthofen was now in Samantha's body and Samantha was now in Richthofen's body. Richthofen now had full control of the zombies and the ether. As we know, once Richthofen got what he wanted and gained control, Dr. Maxis then told Takeo, Nikolai, and Dempsey that he needs their help to defeat Richthofen. And so, realizing that Richthofen was evil and that he had betrayed them, they agreed to help Maxis, where they launched missiles from the moon to the Earth, leaving it fractured and broken. And in doing so, this now meant that Richthofen's connection to the ether was fractured, so he didn't have a proper connection to the ether. However, he still maintained control over the zombies. And that was the end of the moon Easter egg. We sent the 3 rockets to the Earth, we blew it up, and that was it. Richthofen was still in control of the zombies. After Moon, we go straight to Transit, so we hear nothing else about these characters still stuck on the moon. Takeo, Nikolai, Dempsey, and Samantha stuck in Richthofen's body. What happened to these characters? Were they stuck there? Are they still on the moon now? Did they die? Did they escape? Well, we do know in Buried at the end of that Easter egg, once Maxis gained control in 2035, he returned to the moon and plucked Samantha from Richthofen's body so she could join him in Argotha. So Samantha did escape. She joined Maxis in Argotha. But as we know, Maxis only cared about his daughter. He doesn't really give a damn about Takeo, Nikolai, and Dempsey, even though they helped him. He could have easily taken them from the moon and helped them to escape, but he didn't. As we see, he left them there. And so because of this, we can only assume that these characters were still trapped on the moon with no way to escape. I mean, we can only put it down to they would have eventually died, either starvation, getting overrun by the zombies. From what we know, they didn't escape, so they were still trapped on the moon and probably died. GameBink says, can you make a video on the Margwa and where it came from? Now, a lot of people always ask me, can you do a video on the parasites, the Margwa, the meatballs? But all of these fit into the same video. They are all Apothic Ins, and as we know, the Apothic Ins are a group. They're all the same thing, they just look slightly different. As we know, the Apothic Ins at one time were keepers. Back in the very beginning, there was only the Keeper, the Ethers, Dr. Monty, and the Shadow Man. One day, some of the Keepers began messing with the Dark Ether, and then the Dark Ether began corroding and corrupting their minds, turning some of the Keepers evil. And because of this, the War of Argotha broke out, a war between the good and the evil Keepers. The evil Keepers were defeated and banished to the Dark Ether, and whilst trapped in the Dark Ether, over time, they began to change. They began to morph into something that resembled nothing of their former Keeper selves, and so they turned into the Apothic Ins, and that is their backstory. Some of them gained 3 heads, which is the Margwa. Some of them gained multiple eyes, which is the meatball things. Some of them gained wings, which is the parasites. All of these creatures, these Apothic Ins, were once keepers, and that is essentially the story. Adrian Dominguez, is that how you pronounce it? I'm totally sorry, dude. He says, when Maxis died, how did he turn into the Shadow Man? Well, I get what you're saying, but that's not exactly the case. As we know in Revelations, the Shadow Man was trapped inside of the summoning key, and in order to break free, he used Maxis. Because Maxis in the house didn't have a soul, he only had a brain, that meant that the Shadow Man who was trapped inside of the summoning key could use Dr. Maxis to his advantage. He lured him down to the basement, got inside of Dr. Maxis' mind, told Maxis to pick up the summoning key, and in doing so, Dr. Maxis unwittingly released the Shadow Man from the key. And this now meant that Dr. Maxis, who had no soul, became trapped inside of the key. So basically they switched positions. The Shadow Man was released and Dr. Maxis was sucked in. He was now trapped inside of the key, whilst the Shadow Man was free to do whatever he wishes. And as we know, he released the Apothic Ins and Monty's Perfect Universe. So hopefully that answers your question, and the final one comes from Diablo 5704-Vlogs, Gaming and More, who made the Silica Fire. Again, this is a similar question to the Transit turbine weapon, but again, the Silica Fire is a buildable weapon. It's made up of a mannequin foot, a gas canister, a handbrake, wires, and an unknown purple liquid. We don't exactly know what this liquid is. It could be 115, but it's purple, so it could be some other hazardous liquid that our characters just find in Die Rise. I mean, again, it's just a weapon that's put together using random parts. There's no storyline behind it. This was at one time probably the best wonder weapon that we had in zombies. Let me know in the comments section below what your favorite wonder weapon is. I have done my top 5 worst and best wonder weapons, so I mean, if you want to go ahead and check that video out. No one wants to watch me. Oh, thank you for 350,000 subs. Yeah. So, there we go. Let me know what you think. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video today. As always, if you have a like rating, would be very much appreciated. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest zombies videos on the channel. Leave any questions you have in the comments section below. And of course, I will see you all in the next video. Thank you and goodbye.